Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today is Friday, September 19th, 2025, and consultants, our elected officials, are trying to use consultants more than anything else, and they're trying to justify it by saying, well, I actually don't know their justification at this point in time. It seems like they're just trying to justify wasting our money while hiring a workforce that doesn't do the job, just outsources their job. And that's weird. And I'm all for standing on the shoulders of giants. I'm all for making sure that you have experts guiding your response, maybe, or if you've never run a train yard or a long what's it called? Supply chain or something like that. And you don't quite understand how it works. It's no use you trying to get up to speed, have somebody bring you up to speed, use that expertise. I don't find that necessarily incorrect, but when you have nothing but consultants running the government and everything else, that's a huge problem. And I think that we've tipped that balance. We've got it from consultants aiding the elected officials to consultants just doing the job of the elected officials while the elected officials F off and do something else. And that's I think the crux of the problem, in my opinion. Blanchette talks about supporting Alberta in its separatist move because of our top story today, and that's the notwithstanding clause, but we'll get there in a second. The woods restrictions are lifted. Thanks, Noel, for sending that my way in Nova Scotia, except for one, Annapolis, I think, is the only place that it's not lifted. And so it's long before October, I guess, kind of. So that's good news. What is Beans for Women for Empowerment? I think it's money laundering. But I digress. Digital IDs. What's worse than digital IDs? How about a full-blown digital minister? My audio has changed and I'm worried I'm clipping. So apologies. I'm going to have to pay attention to this during the show. It might be okay, but I'm going to have to pay attention. Let me know if it's okay on the live stream or whatever. We seem to have low numbers, but let me know if it's not good. I'll check in a minute or two. Going after the screens and the blind trusts and government funding of Antifa. Sorry, the digital ID, I got kind of derailed. There is an actual digital minister in one country. I can't remember the name of the country, but the minister was appointed on September 11th. So by presidential decree, it's an AI. Crazy. And it's in charge of procurement or something like that. Albania, I think it is. So that's also the war, the country the United States goes to war with in Wag the Dog. So that's just kind of funny. And okay, so the main story for today is, of course, the notwithstanding clause and the attack on the notwithstanding clause. And to me, it's very, very notable because why are they attacking the okay, good. Thank you for confirming the stream is good. Why are they attacking the notwithstanding clause now? The notwithstanding clause is section 33 of the charter. It is a part of the charter. Without the notwithstanding clause, there is no confederation. There is no charter. It wouldn't have been signed. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. The charter and the battle for the charter. And what caused this schism? Why are we doing this, Canada? I don't know. Actually, I do know. Here it is. Global News. Global Edmonton is reporting. Danielle Smith has directed officials to invoke the charter's notwithstanding clause in amending 3 laws that affect transgender people. Says a leaked government memo. My gosh, what can we do about this? Sean Fraser, get on this, right meow, right? And so Sean Fraser did get on this, and we're going to read this. We're going to read this color on it, Howard's color on this in just a minute. But first, the letter from Sean Fraser. So he says, as Attorney General of Canada, I've filed a factum with the Supreme Court of Canada outlining Canada's position on constitutional issues raised by the use of the notwithstanding clause. The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms is a pillar of our democracy and a reflection of our shared values. It guarantees fundamental freedoms, including freedom of thought, belief, expression, religion, and association. It also guarantees equality before the law and the right to life, liberty, and security of the person. It actually doesn't do any of those things at this point in time. I think the charter is a nice thought, but in practice, it's useless, less than useless. Anyway, I digress. He's saying it does all these things. It does not. It absolutely does not. Look at what happened during COVID. Freedom of association, if the government allows you to, I guess, maybe kind of, sort of. Like, no. Freedom of association now, if you want to have Tucker Carlson come and do an interview in Alberta, the press in Ontario will go wild and crazy and call you all sorts of names. Freedom of association? I don't think so, right? Freedom of religion? Well, if you're one kind of religion, right? Like, I don't think so. So there's problems with all of this. It seems weird, right? And they're saying, oh, yes, we're so good. We're not good. I was sold this version of Canada. I was talking with a friend about this yesterday. I was sold this version of Canada in the 90s, and I believed it. I believed we had, fair courts and democracy that listened to its citizens and represented its citizens fairly, and courts that were fair and just, and then I grew up and I realized, holy cow, was I just naive that whole time? Maybe. I may have been naive this whole time. Maybe we never had that system. Maybe I just believed that we had that system and I had no reason to question it. But there were people screaming then, like, the system you think you live in is not the system you live in at all. And so they say this, but I don't think it's true at all. The Charter protects these rights for everyone in Canada, and they are the heart of our democratic society. Do we have a democratic society? This case is about more than the immediate issues before the court. The Supreme Court's decision will shape how both federal and provincial governments may use the Notwithstanding clause for years to come. As the court considers this case, Canadians can count on the government of Canada to defend their constitution, respect their rights and freedoms, and to stand up for the Charter that protects them. Nonsense. Absolute nonsense. And if you remove the Notwithstanding clause, you're not protecting the Charter at all. You're invalidating the Charter, if you ask me. Here's Howard, and he says, what Sean Fraser doesn't say but must know is that he asked the Supreme Court to adopt a totalitizing view of judicial power that would fundamentally alter the constitutional compact of 1982, throwing the country into constitutional crisis. Funny, he leaves that out. I'll explain. 1. As the Alberta government factum puts it, the Constitution Act 1982 was the result of a carefully negotiated federal-provincial agreement. Simply put, there would have been no charter without Section 33. 2. Minister Fraser and the Liberal government now want the courts to undo that agreement and exercise a plenary and undefined power to limit the ability of legislatures to use the democratic safeguard of Section 33. On what basis they are asking the court to do this? Liberals gesture vaguely by using the holistic reading of the basic constitutional structure of the Constitution, sort of thing. 4. Why should the phrase basic constitutional structure raise alarm bells? Because it's the justification Supreme Courts in other countries have used to sweep aside democratic powers. Look up basic structure doctrine. How baseless is this proposal? Baseless enough that the Liberal government actually has to try to twist the fact that the Charter expressly provides for renewals of Section 33 into an agreement that this means that in some cases it should not be allowed to be renewed. Really, see AGC Factum, pages 26 to 31. 6. The Liberal government doesn't even purport to offer a test or clear rule for when the court should second guess and limit the use of Section 33. Here are their words. This court needs not establish a definitive or exhaustive test. A court could assess the impact of any statute invoking Section 33 by examining the specific circumstances of each use and by conducting contextual analysis. 7. It gets worse, but the upshot is that the Liberal government is asking the Supreme Court to engage in an unconstitutional power grab that would rewrite the political compact that underpins the Constitution. How? In 1982, all parties agreed that the Constitution would preserve some of the safeguards of our parliamentary democracy to prevent a handover of all legal and political powers to the courts. That safeguard was preserved in Section 33. Now the Liberal government wants the courts to assume control of Section 33 and limit its use based on an undefined test that the judges themselves will make up and apply on a case-by-case basis. Sounds super fun. If the court follows this approach, it is asking for a constitutional crisis. It's making a case for Quebec separatism and inviting governments to ignore its rulings. I would like to think that at least 4 judges on the Supreme Court of Canada have sufficient respect for the Constitution and enough of an instinct for institutional self-preservation to reject the Liberal government's reckless approach. We'll see. I am not optimistic. No, they're toadies of the Liberals. They're Liberals through and through. Most of the judges were appointed by Liberals, right? Senator Housakis is responding to Fraser's letter. Canada's charter was built on balance, rights with reasonable limits, provincial authority, and the supremacy of Parliament. Nation building has always been an ongoing negotiation, debate, and compromise, not a predetermined destiny. The Carney Liberals want to upend that balance, weakening the provinces and Parliament while handing extraordinary power to unelected judges. This was never the Charter's intent. Right. And so we have a real problem, and I don't think it's going to sort itself out. But hey, man, I hope I'm wrong. Lee is responding to this as well. He says Quebec has used the Notwithstanding clause around 12 times with not one intervention by the feds. When the Bloc Québécois were the government, or when the PQ were government. I don't think that's the Bloc Québécois. That's the provincial government. That's separatist. Were the government. They attached the notwithstanding clause to every single bill they passed, just in case. Silence from the feds. I mean, that's a good policy. Hey, feds, F you. We're not listening to a damn thing you have to say. Alberta decides to use the clause, and it's off to the Supreme Court of Canada to see if Section 33 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which has been in place for 43 years, is legal. So we got to check this, guys. Oh, hold on. Alberta wants to do what now? Got to go to the courts. I'm not sure about that, Alberta, right? Ooh. This is location profiling, right? Like this, if all of the provinces were driving around on the freeway, right? Alberta just got pulled over because it looked a little Alberta-y, right? Like, so. Ben says this is outrageous and will cause a serious constitutional crisis if the courts entertain it. The notwithstanding clause exists precisely because most provinces agreed to sign on to the charter with a clause that allowed them to assert their constitutional supremacy over specific sections of the charter. It exists precisely because it prevents parliamentary supremacy in a uniquely Canadian context. If the Supreme Court of Canada defangs it, expect a deserved constitutional crisis. I think that's probably pretty accurate. Yep. Tokyo Rosie says losing the notwithstanding clause would put Canada at the mercy of unelected Liberal appointed judges after 10 years of bending under Trudeau. This could be the thing that actually breaks the back of Confederacy. And at the time when that's happening, Blanchette's talking about hanging out in Alberta and talking with Alberta about separatism and cooperating with our neighbors, which doesn't include a pipeline. Because that's what they always say in Quebec, right? Oh yeah, we can't sign off on this pipeline. Give me a break, guys. Laurie says, the notwithstanding clause is not unconstitutional. It is part of the charter. The Constitution would never have been approved by the provinces without it. And it is a reasonable guardrail with limitations against courts making decisions that should be made by legislatures. Yeah, yep. And here is just a little bit. This guy is asking, we heard somebody is making overtures over in Alberta about separatism. What do you think about that, Mr. Blanchette? And in the context of them gutting the notwithstanding clause, Alberta separatism seems even more attractive, right? And so we'll see. But here's Blanchette talking about this.
Not a bad timing, because I seem to understand that the numbers of the Parti québécois are not so bad.
Anglais. Monsieur Saint-Pierre Plamondon just had a successful visit to Alberta, where he built a number of bridges with independence leaders in Alberta. Are you planning in the near future to travel to Alberta yourself or meet with leaders of Alberta's independence movement?
I had thought about it, but I understand that since Paul did it, it is not necessary for me to do that trip. But I'm very open to this idea. We have to start all independentist voices and leaders to explain who we are, what we want, the way we would do it, and what it would be the morning after. We have to do that. This is what I do when I go in Washington also, when I go in Paris or everywhere. And we have to do that in Canada also, because if it comes, we've got to make it smooth and best for everybody.
Separatism, right? Being individual entities unto themselves. Here is a little bit of trade stuff, and Carney is very, very cool about trade with the United States. There has not been a meeting since late August, apparently, according to reports. And so instead, he's going to Mexico. Poilievre says it's a fake agreement, and I think he's probably right. It's similar to what happened in Germany when they went to sign the agreement of understanding, except we're going to send $9.9 billion, $5 of it to help displaced people, $5 billion. I think it's billion. It might be million, but I've got the thing to help displaced people. I've got the tab. You'll see it in a minute. And the other $4 million to fight to the United Nations to fight the drug cartels. So I feel like we're sending a bunch of money for nothing. I feel like it's not a trade relationship more than we're sending a bunch of money down to Mexico for the United Nations. So anyway, here's Poilievre saying this is a fake. It's a fake trade deal, and Carney's kind of effing off right now. Here we go.
The Prime Minister is in Mexico today for a photo op and fake agreement, but it's a great opportunity to compare because both countries are neighbors of the United States. In the last quarter, Canada's economy shrunk by 1.6%, while the Mexican economy grew by 2.4%. The Canadian exports to the United States crashed by 18%, while Mexican exports to the U.S. are up 1.4%. Wow. And the Canadian unemployment rate is 3 times higher than Mexicans. Wow. Will the Prime Minister ask his Mexican friends what they're doing right that he's doing so wrong?
Right here.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister believes in having a strong relationship with Mexico, our second biggest trading partner. That's exactly why he is in Mexico today, meeting with the President to make sure that we can have our trading relationship really on par. Now,
is Mexico our second biggest trading partner? Maybe if you include the USMCA in that calculation, like the trade that happens under USMCA, maybe if you look at it that way. I heard that it was after the United States, it was actually our fourth. Like if you discount the United States, then the one after the United States is 1. Mexico, I heard, was 4 after that. So I don't know if that's accurate.
the other thing that the leader of the opposition needs to understand is that we're living in a much more dangerous and complicated world with trade tensions having impacts on trading partners all around the world. We will stand up for workers, we'll stand up for our businesses, and we'll build Canada strong.
What happens if there's trade headwinds, but what happens if you don't show up to the trade table for the last month? What happens then? Because that seems like the main part of the problem. Like you haven't shown up, and that's the problem. Here is the real Mr. Bench. He says Carney's off to Mexico to get a trade deal. Bloc Québécois leader Blanchette reminds Canadians how much trade is done. 80% of all trade is with the United States. Of the 20% left, Mexico is number 4. That's what I was just saying. The reason I was just saying it is this tweet. Do you still believe Carney is the best negotiator? No, absolutely. I never did, though. So that's probably the difference. Here's Blanchette just putting a cap on what trade we've been talking about here.
Is the 5th in importance in matters of trade. 80% of what Canada exports is to United States. It will let you calculate approximatively the importance of the Mexican market for Canada. So let's improve that. But in no way could we compare the Mexican market for Canada and the American market for Canada.
In no way could we compare those two markets. They're vastly, vastly different. Pierre Poilievre says the U.S. gave Mexico a 90-day trade deadline extension in July after increasing their year-over-year trade with them by 8.2%. What did Prime Minister Carney get? A 10.4% drop in trade, doubled tariffs, and no deal in sight. What did Mexico get right that Mark Carney got so catastrophically wrong? They're not showing up to the table. They're not there. And they're sending Chrystia Freeland to Ukraine, which might be beneficial to Donald Trump, except that they might be positioning her as the next prime minister or president of Ukraine, which I hope I'm wrong on that prediction, but man, I could see it happen. Anita Anand says she's got family from Ukraine, right? Oh, she's a Ukrainian citizen, honorary Ukrainian citizen. Oh, Ukrainian Canadian citizen in charge of Ukraine. She's an actor in a different way. Anita Anand says Canada and Mexico have had a diplomatic relations for over 80 years, and today we are going even further. Our new strategic partnership will deepen ties between our countries and make North America the most competitive, dynamic, and resilient economic region in the world. And I don't think so. This is what they're announcing. It says to immediately move forward in priority sectors, Prime Minister Carney announced a new forthcoming trade mission to Mexico led by the President of the King's Privy Council for Canada and the Minister responsible for Canada-U.S. trade, intergovernmental affairs, internal trade, and One Canada economy, Dominic LeBlanc, and $9.9 million in funding for United Nations-led projects. So it's United Nations drug thing. And to support migrant integration initiatives in Mexico and combat the illicit production and tackling of trafficking of fentanyl. 5.5 for the migrant integration, the rest 4 point whatever it is for the drugs, right? And so that's pretty crazy. And I think that's all it is. Like, what do we get? So yeah, the 5.5 is a multi-agency UN project, labor organization to support the integration of migrants and displaced people in Mexico. 4.4 million through UN Office on Drugs and Crime and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police to bolster Mexico's ongoing efforts to address trafficking of illicit fentanyl, other synthetic opiates. I think it's a horse and pony show. Where's the fentanyl czar? What's he doing? What's he up to? No, nothing. So yeah, Carney Scheinbaum signed deal to deepen economic and security ties. Oh yeah, I guess I'll sign a deal that says you're going to send me $10 million. Is it 10 million or billion? Hold on, I forgot to look. Million. It's million with an M. So there you go. But still, sure, yeah, $10 million for this piece of paper. Yeah, I guess I could sign it, and you guys will send some money. Sounds fun. What does this get for us? It doesn't really. Why can't we firm up our own country's anti-fentanyl stuff? What's the fentanyl czar done? Why are we doing it in Mexico? Right? Why are we spending millions on displaced people in Mexico? Doesn't seem like a prudent trade deal at all. So weird, right? Really, really strange. Here's the last one. Oh, okay. I'll do a couple of these government. I wanted to get to what is beans for women for development or for empowerment, and it's another one of these dark money programs. Here's Mark Carney, and gov.exe says Mark Carney is an actual Marxist. He believes shrinking the size of government is bad, and that it's the duty of the state to redistribute your wealth, to invest your wealth, build the economy and redistribute wealth. He thinks capitalism is dangerous. Here is Mark Carney saying we can't redistribute what we don't have. Here we go.
All Canadians will be severely compromised because we can't redistribute what we don't have. Governments that spend too much and invest too little.
Sorry if that was too quiet, but he just said it. We can't redistribute what we don't have. If we don't have your money, how could I possibly redistribute it? Right? How could I possibly give it to poor people in other countries for beans? It's not your job to give my money to poor people in other countries for beans. What do I mean by this? Here's Andy Lee. She says, I just thought you should know that as you're trying to find ways to save money to pay your bills, Canada just sent $8.2 million to Vietnam to create gender-just rice. Gender-just rice. Okay, like, I don't even know how to explain it. But here's the project profile. Greening our rice, gender-just, low-carbon rice value chains in Vietnam. What is gender-just rice? But falling down the gender-just rice rabbit hole led me to beans for women for empowerment. And it was the extra 4 that had me Google this, because I thought, what in the world is beans for women for empowerment? And it is a program, and apparently it's got a cap of 15 million, but we sent 22 million to it in 2023. And Beans for Women for Empowerment is a nonprofit charity organization. And here's the write-up by the AI, the brave AI. It says, the Beans for Women for Empowerment project is a multi-year initiative, 23 to 28, focused on strengthening gender equality, decision-making, and resource rights for women and girls in the bean sector across conflict-prone provinces in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, specifically North Kivu, South Kivu, and another one that I'm not going to try and say. Funded by Global Affairs Canada, the project aims to improve food security by enhancing bean value chains, increasing the incomes of smallholder women, and enabling them to make a living from their land. It operates from 23 to 27, 28 on the thing, with a maximum contribution of 15 million. But Canada gave 22 million, and it says to March 31st, 2028. You can see there. So, weird, right? Weird way to waste our money. Beans for Women for Empowerment. We're spending money for women to be self-sustaining in the Congo. Why? Why are we doing that when we have homeless people in Canada? It doesn't seem to make much sense to me. And with that, we've got to say goodbye to the stream. We've got lots more show coming up. Woods restrictions. Thanks, Noel. Noel sent this to me this morning. There's only one area in Nova Scotia with woods restrictions remaining, so that's good news. The government kind of backed down, but at the same time, like the tyranny is constant. It's a constant battle. There's a constant fight between the government wanting to crack down and the citizens saying, hey guys, this seems crazy. Like, for our safety, are you sure? Are you sure it's just not for your control? Anyway, that's enough out of me for the stream. So